Okay, so get this. We're diving deep into space farming today.
Space farming.
Yeah, growing food in space, like out of this world, right?
Feels like something straight out of Star Trek.
It does, doesn't it?
Oh,
But that's what we're looking at today.
cool.
We're basing this deep dive on a podcast called Beyond Earth. And let me tell you, it's fascinating.
I bet. So what's the big deal with space farming? Why should we care about growing lettuce on Mars?
Well, it's more than just a cool sci-fi idea. It's actually crucial for the future of space exploration.
How so?
Think about it. As we venture further into space, relying on Earth for supplies becomes pretty much impossible.
Ah, I see. It's about sustainability.
Exactly. It's about creating self-sufficient life support systems.
So like a miniature Earth in a spaceship.
Pretty much, yeah. It's about producing fresh food right there. Recycling carbon dioxide into oxygen, the whole shebang.
Wow, that's incredible. But how do you even grow anything in space? I mean, there's no gravity, intense radiation. It's a pretty harsh environment.
Right. It's definitely not your grandma's garden, that's for sure.
Yeah. So how do they do it?
Well, they've had to come up with some pretty ingenious solutions, like hydroponics and aeroponics.
Hydro what now?
Hydroponics and aeroponics. Basically, it means growing plants without soil.
No soil. How does that even work?
You know those indoor herb gardens that are becoming popular? That's hydroponics.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
They deliver nutrients directly to the roots using water. And with aeroponics, they mist the roots with a nutrient solution.
Clever. It seems like they're turning science fiction into reality, but I bet there are still some major challenges.
Oh, definitely. Space is a tough place to be a plant, that's for sure.
So what are some of the biggest hurdles?
Well, for starters, that whole no-gravity thing throws a wrench in things.
I can imagine. Plants have evolved to grow with gravity, roots down, shoots up. How does that work without it?
It's a real head-scratcher. Roots don't know which way to grow, and water doesn't behave the way it does on Earth.
Water. What do you mean?
Well, in space, water forms these floating blobs, so getting it to the roots is a whole other challenge.
That's wild. So are they able to grow anything at all in space?
Oh yeah, they've had some impressive successes. Lettuce, radishes, even chili peppers.
Chili peppers. In space. That's amazing.
I know, right? But it's not all smooth sailing.
I bet.
The podcast mentions this experiment on the International Space Station called Veggie.
Veggie, like the vegetable.
Yep, very literal. It's this plant growth systems they're using to test different crops and growing techniques.
Cool. So how did it go?
Well, they've had their fair share of problems, like uneven water distribution and difficulties with anchoring those gravity-confused roots.
Makes sense. It's uncharted territory.
But those setbacks have taught them valuable lessons, leading to improvements in the systems.
So what's the takeaway from experiments like Veggie?
It's clear that constant monitoring and adjustments are key. Space farming is a dynamic process. It's all about adapting.
That makes sense, but I'm guessing they're not using regular gardening tools in space.
You guessed it. We're talking high-tech systems, like the Advanced Plant Habitat.
Sounds fancy. What's that?
It's basically a self-contained mini-farm packed with sensors and using LED lights to mimic sunlight.
LEDs. Why LEDs?
Because they're super energy efficient and allow scientists to control the wavelengths of light the plants receive, replicating sunlight as best they can.
Smart. But what about water? Isn't that a major concern in space?
Absolutely. Every drop counts. So they've developed these amazing closed-loop systems where water is constantly recycled and reused.
Wow, that's incredible. They really are creating a tiny ecosystem up there.
It's like a microcosm of Earth, a testament to human ingenuity.
It makes you wonder, could these closed-loop systems developed for space offer solutions for sustainability back here on Earth?
And that's a thought-provoking question. Maybe we can address that in a future deep dive.
Definitely worth exploring. But for now, let's stick to space.
Right, so we've talked about the challenges of growing plants in space, but how does all of this tie into the bigger picture of space exploration?
Well, space farming is essential for long-duration missions, especially if we're talking about colonizing Mars.
So it's not just about surviving in space, it's about thriving.
Exactly. And that's where bioregenerative life support systems come in.
Bio what now?
Bioregenerative life support systems, it's a mouthful, I know.
Sounds impressive, though.
They're basically closed-loop ecosystems where plants do more than just provide food.
Like, what else could they do?
They also produce oxygen, recycle waste, purify water. It's like a miniature biosphere.
Wow, so it's like taking a piece of Earth with you to Mars.
Precisely. It's about creating a sustainable and self-sufficient environment for humans to live and work in.
That's mind-blowing. But, speaking of pushing boundaries, the Beyond Earth podcast mentioned something that blew my mind.
What's that?
Genetically modifying plants for space.
Genetically modified space plants. That sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Right. But it's actually happening. Scientists are using tools like CRISPR technology to tweak plant DNA to make them better suited for the harsh conditions of space.
So they're creating super plants, custom designed for life beyond Earth.
In a way, yes. They're working on things like radiation resistance, water efficiency, low light tolerance.
Wow, that's incredible. It seems like there's no limit to what science can achieve.
It's truly remarkable.
Yeah.
But, with all this talk about space, it's easy to forget about good old Earth.
True, we can't get too lost in the stars.
Exactly. But here's the thing. All this research and innovation in space farming has huge implications for us down here, too.
How so?
Well, think about those hydroponic systems and closed-loop ecosystems we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Those technologies could revolutionize agriculture, potentially addressing issues like food scarcity and environmental sustainability.
Ah, I see. We're solving problems in space and finding solutions for Earth at the same time.
Precisely. It's like a cosmic feedback loop of innovation.
That's pretty cool. So space farming isn't just about boldly going where no one has gone before. It's also about finding solutions to some of the biggest challenges facing humanity right here at home.
Exactly. It's about pushing the boundaries of science and technology to create a better future for everyone, no matter where they live.
It makes you wonder, could space farming hold the key to a more sustainable future for all of us?
That's a question worth pondering, for sure. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's zoom back out to the vastness of space for a moment.
Sounds good.
We've talked about modifying plants for space, but could we use those same techniques to address the increasingly challenging conditions we're facing here on Earth due to climate change?
Oh, wow, yeah. Could we create crops that can withstand drought, extreme temperatures, or even soil salinity?
Exactly. Could space farming research help us develop crops that are more resilient to the impacts of climate change, ensuring food security for future generations?
It's a fascinating thought. It seems like we've stumbled onto an incredibly important connection here.
It really does. It's like this whole space farming endeavor is opening up a whole new world of possibilities, both for exploring the cosmos and for addressing some of the most pressing issues facing humanity right here on Earth.
Oh, definitely. It's making me rethink the potential of space exploration and its impact on our lives.
Me too. It's clear that space farming is much more than just a futuristic dream. It's a field with the potential to transform our world in profound ways.
Absolutely. I can't wait to delve deeper into this topic and see what other amazing discoveries are on the horizon.
Right? We've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore. But for now, we need to take a break. So join us next time as we continue our deep dive into the world of space farming and explore the ethical, economic, and even psychological dimensions of this groundbreaking field.
Sounds good. I'm already hooked.
Welcome back to our deep dive into space farming. Last time, remember, we got into the nitty-gritty of how you grow plants in zero gravity.
Yeah, the tech is pretty wild. And who knew about genetically modified space plants?
Right, it's mind-blowing stuff.
Right.
But like with any new frontier, space farming brings up some big ethical questions.
Ethical questions like what?
Well, it's easy to get caught up in the sci-fi dream of colonizing Mars.
Oh, for sure.
But we got to pause and think, do we have the right to terraform another planet?
Especially if there might be, even microbial life already there.
It's that classic sci-fi dilemma, right? Messing up a pristine world without even knowing it.
Yeah, we don't want to be those guys.
Exactly. Planetary protection should be top priority no matter how cool space farming is.
Totally agree. But speaking of cool and maybe less philosophical,
Go on.
what about the money side of space farming? Right now, space travel is crazy expensive.
Tell me about it. The cost of launching stuff into orbit is astronomical, pun intended.
Huh. But imagine if we could grow food and stuff right there in space.
Right, like no more shipping costs from Earth to Mars.
It would totally change the game for long missions, maybe even make those Martian colonies actually affordable.
It's like those old explorers setting sail for spices and riches, except now it's the stars.
Exactly. Space farming could be the start of a whole new era of exploration and opportunity.
Okay, now I'm getting excited again. But let's be real, there are still huge hurdles before we have commercial space farms.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We've come a long way, but there's still so much we don't know.
Like what?
Well, How do plants really behave in microgravity long term? We're still figuring that out.
It's a whole new ball game compared to Earth.
Right. And it's not just about the plants themselves.
What else then?
We need to nail down the whole closed-loop ecosystem, make sure it's truly sustainable.
It's like a giant puzzle, and we're still missing some pieces.
Good analogy, but even with the challenges, it's hard not to get excited thinking about how space farming could shape humanity's future.
Right. We're talking about potentially colonizing other planets. It's mind-blowing.
It is. But even beyond that, space farming makes you think about our place in the universe.
Deep thoughts. I like it.
Well, we're facing big problems here on Earth, right? Climate change, running out of resources.
Yeah, not to be a downer.
But could space farming offer solutions? Maybe a blueprint for a more sustainable future, both in space and back home?
It's like we're looking to the stars for answers to Earth's problems.
Exactly. Imagine fresh, local food grown year-round anywhere, using minimal water.
It sounds utopian, but maybe space exploration is the key.
It's about pushing our limits, finding solutions that benefit everyone.
Okay, so big picture stuff is awesome, but let's not forget about the astronauts themselves.
Oh, right, the human element.
Being an astronaut is already super demanding, isolated, risky.
Yeah, imagine being stuck in a metal box for months, years even.
Exactly. But imagine the psychological boost of tending a garden in space.
Like a little piece of Earth with you.
More than just food, it's a connection to life, a reminder of home.
Studies show being around nature is good for you, reduces stress, lifts your mood.
So space farming could be crucial for astronauts' mental health, especially on long missions.
Gives them a purpose, a connection to something growing and living.
Makes me wonder, could we bring those benefits back down to Earth? Like using space farming ideas to improve well-being here?
Now that's a thought. We talked about vertical farms, hydroponics for food.
Right, but what if those were in our homes, schools, workplaces?
Exactly. Your own little mini farm in the kitchen, fresh herbs all year round.
Or community gardens using hydroponics, bringing people together.
It's about more than just tech. It's about connecting with nature and each other.
So space farming could change how we eat, how we relate to the environment, even how we build communities.
It's like taking those space innovations and grounding them literally back on Earth.
Okay, I'm loving this. But even with all the good stuff, we got to be realistic, right? What could go wrong with space farming? What risks are we overlooking?
Good point. Every new tech has its downsides. Space farming is no exception.
So, besides messing up Martian ecosystems, what else?
Well, think about unintended consequences. Like, what if space farming gets so good it hurts Earth's agriculture?
Whoa, haven't thought of that.
Imagine space-grown food is cheaper, more abundant, puts Earth farmers out of business.
That's a serious economic disruption. We wouldn't want to cause harm while trying to do good.
Right, tech advancements can backfire if we're not careful.
It's like this giant cosmic chess game. You got to think several moves ahead.
Exactly. And then there's the unknowns, the stuff we haven't even considered yet.
The things we don't know, that's always a bit scary.
It's humbling. We're pioneers here, and we're bound to make mistakes.
But that's part of the adventure, right? Learning, adapting, pushing those boundaries.
Totally. And space farming is about pushing boundaries, both scientific and in how we think about humanity's future.
It's a global challenge, one that needs collaboration on a scale we haven't seen before.
We're all crewmates on this spaceship Earth. Gotta work together if we want to reach the stars.
Beautifully put. So listeners, that's a wrap for part 2 of our space farming deep dive.
Next time, we'll get into where research is at right now, what the big obstacles are.
And what it all means for the future of humanity, so buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're on the final stretch of our exploration into space farming.
It's been quite the journey so far, from zero-gravity gardens to genetically modified space plants. Who knew growing food could be so out of this world exciting?
Right. But before we get lost in the starry-eyed potential, let's bring things back down to Earth. Or, well, back down to the reality of making space farming actually happen.
Good point. Gotta stay grounded, even when talking about space.
Exactly. So, for this last part, let's talk roadblocks, the challenges we got to overcome to make space farming more than just a cool science experiment.
All right, challenge accepted. Where do we even start?
Well, the elephant in the room, or should we say the rocket in the cargo bay, is cost.
Ah, yes, the ever-present budget constraints of space travel.
It's not just about building these high-tech farms. It's about launching them into space, which ain't cheap.
Every pound, every ounce even, adds up in terms of fuel and complexity.
Right, it's not like packing a picnic basket for a road trip.
More like building a self-sustaining biodome and then figuring out how to ship it across the solar system.
Exactly. And then there's the maintenance. What happens when something breaks down on, say, a Martian farm?
You can't just call a repair guy.
Exactly. Sending a technician to Mars for repairs, that's going to cost a pretty penny.
So cost, that's hurdle number one. But surely there's more.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about having the money. It's about having the know-how.
The knowledge gap, that's a big one too.
We're still figuring out how plants behave in microgravity. It's not as simple as replicating Earth conditions.
Plants have evolved for millions of years with gravity. Throwing that out the window changes everything.
Right. Root growth, nutrient uptake, water distribution, it's all different in space.
We need to understand the science before we can really perfect the technology.
It's like those early botanists, but instead of figuring out soil, they're figuring out zero-G.
Perfect analogy. And speaking of brains, we can't do this alone. Space farming needs all hands on deck.
You mean like astronauts with green thumbs?
Well, it would help. But seriously, we need experts from all kinds of fields.
Plant scientists, engineers, nutritionists, you name it.
It's a truly interdisciplinary challenge, requiring collaboration on a massive scale.
So we've got the cost, the knowledge gap, and the need for a super team of experts.
Those are some pretty hefty challenges, gotta admit.
It does feel a bit daunting. So, honestly, is there optimism in the field? Or is it more like we're doomed?
I'd say there's a healthy dose of both. It's a tough road ahead, no doubt, but the potential payoff is huge.
Solving food scarcity, creating sustainable ecosystems, maybe even colonizing other planets.
Exactly. Those are goals worth striving for, even if it takes time and a lot of brain power.
It's like a giant puzzle. We might not have all the pieces yet, but with every discovery, every breakthrough, we're getting closer to the full picture.
And who knows, maybe some of the solutions we find in space will circle back and help us right here on Earth.
Speaking of which, we've talked a lot about the future, but what about the present? How is space farming impacting us right now?
Oh, it's already making waves. Those vertical farms you see popping up in cities, the LED grow lights people use for indoor plants, those have roots, so to speak, in space farming research.
So we're already benefiting from this space-age tech without even realizing it.
Exactly. The innovations trickle down, sometimes in unexpected ways.
It's a reminder that exploring the unknown isn't just about what's out there. It's about what we bring back to benefit everyone.
And space farming is a prime example of that. It's about pushing boundaries, challenging ourselves to think differently about food, about resources, about sustainability as a whole.
It's about looking to the stars and finding solutions for problems here on Earth. Pretty inspiring stuff, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a testament to human ingenuity, our drive to explore, and our ability to solve problems even in the most extreme environments.
And it's a journey that's just getting started. Who knows what incredible discoveries lie ahead? So to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into space farming.
It's been a pleasure exploring this fascinating topic with you.
Keep looking up, keep those questions coming, and remember the future of food might just be written in the stars.